Well, Canada keeps making international headlines, and
all for the wrong reasons.
Viva Frei, Montreal litigator turned YouTuber, and this is Winnie the Westie, and there has been an update in the Artur Pawlowski case. That is the Albertan pastor who was arrested for being in contempt of court for holding church gatherings in defiance of a court order prohibiting illegal gatherings. He's also better known as the Get Out guy.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out.
For those of you who may not know, a while back a video came out of Canada and it went super viral internationally of an Albertan pastor screaming "Get out, get out, get out" quite vigorously at police and Alberta Health Services, who showed up to his church to break up a church gathering that was allegedly illegal in defiance of a court order. His name is Artur Pawlowski. He also referred to the police and the Alberta Health Services as "it rhymes with Yahtzee and we're not allowed saying it on YouTube," and this landed him in some serious trouble under Canadian law. I did a couple of breakdowns, updates on the situation. Ultimately, Artur Pawlowski was found to be in contempt of court for violating a court order to which he was not specifically a party, but the court order was specifically notified to him or brought to his attention via the police, the Alberta Health Services, such that when he conducted church gatherings on a going forward basis, he was purported to have been doing it in defiance of a court order, even though he was not a party to that court order. And under law, when it comes to contempt, one does not need to be a specific party to a court order. All they have to have is knowledge of the court order that they are defying in order to be in contempt of that court order. Court file number 2101-05742, Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta, Judicial Centre, Calgary. Applicant, Alberta Health Services. Respondents, Christopher Scott, Whistle Stop 2012 Limited, Glenn Garrett, John Does, Jane Does. It is hereby ordered that 1. That named individual respondents and any other person acting under their instruction or in concert with them or independently to like effect with notice of this order shall be restrained anywhere in Alberta from A. Organizing an in-person gathering including requesting, inciting, or inviting others to attend unquote illegal public gathering end quote. B. Promoting an illegal public gathering via social media or otherwise. C. Attending an illegal public gathering of any nature in a quote public place end quote or a quote private place end quote, which each have the same meaning as given to them in the Public Health Act. So in that video where Artur Pawlowski was kicking out the police and the Alberta Health Services from his church, screaming "Get out, get out, get out," and he said "don't come back without a warrant," well, they apparently came back with a warrant or attempted to serve the notice of the order on Artur Pawlowski, such that if he were to hold a public gathering or a church gathering in the future, it would be in violation of that court order, even though he was not a party to that court order. And that is exactly what they did, and they subsequently arrested Artur Pawlowski and actually detained him for, I think it was 21 days. And the video of his arrest also went somewhat viral, albeit not quite as viral as the Get Out video, but if you haven't seen that video, here's a portion of it.
If you're not recording, it's backwards. Do it, then that's
Well, after Artur Pawlowski was released from jail after his first arrest, he went to the United States to do some television appearances, to do some interviews, to explain to the United States what had happened to him in Canada, and to serve as something of a warning to the United States that this might be coming south of the border if you're not careful. Well, apparently in crossing the border, he was in defiance of the terms of his release, which caused him to be again in contempt of court, and upon his return, he was arrested after his plane landed, quite literally on the tarmac.
Back, away from your back. No, behind your back, away. No, stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Sir, stand up. All right. Stand your back.
Both videos of his arrest are pretty dramatic, and some people might watch those videos and say they were dramatic because he made them dramatic. He made the scene. When they pulled him over, he could have just walked into the car to be arrested peacefully. Others might say if they're going to pull over Artur Pawlowski on the side of a busy highway, he is entitled to make a scene.
It's also known as protesting.
Well, after his second arrest, he was back before a judge to determine sanctions on his contempt, and there are certain portions of this judgment, certain highlights, which, when you read them, you're just going to say, I don't know what is going on in the world anymore. Court of Queen's Bench of Alberta, citation Alberta Health Services versus Pawlowski, 2021, ABQB 813. Introduction. On May 6, 2021, Alberta Health Services, AHS, obtained a court order from Associate Chief Justice J. Rook, the Rook Order, targeting Christopher Scott and others to assist in enforcing community compliance with restrictions imposed by AHS directed at mitigating the risk posed by the novel coronavirus, COVID-19. AHS also obtained an order from Justice Gates on April 23, 2021, the Gates Order, directed at the, quote, street church, end quote, to permit the inspection of their church facilities to conform compliance with AHS health orders. I found that both Pastor Artur and his brother David Pawlowski breached the Rook Order and were thus in contempt of a court order. Alberta Health Services versus Pawlowski, 2021, ABQB 493. While the Pawlowski brothers were not identified by name in the Rook Order, they were clearly on AHS's radar. AHS was aware that their church met on Saturday, having previously been rejected entrance as required by the Gates Order. Therefore, armed with the Rook Order, the Calgary Police Service showed up on May 8 to serve the order, but also filming the contemptuous conduct and the disdain for the health orders exhibited by the Pawlowski brothers. They made every effort to obstruct the police from doing their court-mandated duty. And I'm sorry, I know that this is otherwise a very serious matter, but I have great difficulty hearing the word duty and then not going to that meme from the Family Guy.
Diarrhea.
And now getting back to the spectacle of Artur Pawlowski's arrest, which seemed to have irked the judge, and the judge lets the Pawlowskis know in his judgment. When the Pawlowskis left the church, they were arrested in a spectacle mirroring arrests seen in mass protests or third world countries. It is not an unreasonable observation that the Pawlowskis reveled in their arrest and went out of their way to make their arrest the Saturday night news spectacle that it turned out to be. From this, it can be seen that Pastor Artur Pawlowski's conduct and that of his brother was extremely aggravating. They engaged in both direct and public defiance of a court order designed to save people's lives. From the perspective of proportionality, their sanctions must be significant. And it's a very interesting framing here. What's shocking is not that Canada is actually arresting pastors for conducting church, even if it is in fact in defiance of a court order. That's not what's shocking here. What's shocking is that when getting arrested, the Pawlowskis made a scene. Talk about putting the carriage before the horse. It is not the fact that the pastor is getting arrested that's shocking. It's the fact that the pastor finds it shocking and protests accordingly when getting arrested that is shocking. The judge goes on at length as to why imprisonment or more imprisonment would not be the appropriate sanction, and it hinges a lot on the fact that the judge thinks that Artur Pawlowski wants to get imprisoned to become more of a martyr, so the judge says, I'm not going to imprison you because that will just accomplish your wishes of becoming a greater martyr, so I'm just going to fine you
Tens of thousands of dollars.
We will get to the sanctions at the end of this vlog, because in addition to the Pawlowskis being ordered to pay tens of thousands of dollars for being in contempt of court, the court order itself does something I have never seen that is making international headlines, in that it actually literally, quite literally, not Rachel Maddow literally, compels speech from the Pawlowskis, or at the very least Artur Pawlowski. But before we get to those sanctions, just a few more highlights from this judgment, because it very much seems that the judge was specifically offended that Artur Pawlowski went to the United States to air his grievances with what was being done to him in Canada. It is disappointing that Pastor Pawlowski had to air his grievances about Alberta in another country. Leaders and statesmen don't do that. During his sanction hearing, AHS played some trip reports in which Pastor Pawlowski oozes hubris while relishing in his notoriety. He got to take a picture with a governor of a U.S. state. He is proud of what he asserts is the love of the U.S. people for him. Love he implies he is not feeling in Canada. Just let that sink in for a second. The judge takes issue with the fact that Artur Pawlowski went to the media to discuss and air his grievances. The judge then goes on to say something that I am certain a lot of people out there are going to firmly believe confirm exactly what Artur Pawlowski was saying, and it reads as follows. He accuses the court of being a, quote, tool of the government, end quote. In this regard, he shows no civic understanding of the independence of the courts and their distance from the government. His address to the court during his sanction hearing was a political condemnation of the current government, a condemnation of the men and women who make up the AHS, a condemnation of the courts, and basically a condemnation of everyone who follows the science on COVID-19. He simply refuses to apologize, and his lawyer indicated that it would be hypocritical of him to do so in light of his disdain for AHS AHS and the current Alberta government. He simply refuses to apologize for being rude to the government, and for that, the court is really going to come down hard on him. But for those of you out there who think that we have not yet seen enough confession through projection, this next paragraph illustrates exactly what is wrong with motivated reasoning. He again describes health authorities as not. Pastor Pawlowski makes much virtue of his status in Canada as an immigrant from Poland. With this background, he should understand how inappropriate it is to compare public health officials to a group that killed, by many accounts, 4 million Polish people, of which at least half were Jewish. It defies belief that any immigrant from Poland, having studied the atrocities of the Nazis in that country, could identify a doctor of medicine trying to keep people alive as a Nazi. His address to the court was so inflammatory that I must remind myself that his failure to apologize and to acknowledge his wrongdoings is not a sanction aggravation, but only a lack of mitigation. This is a discussion I have personally had with a great many people. Now, I am not an immigrant from a communist country, but when I speak with immigrants from communist countries who say what is going on in Canada is very reminiscent of what went on in their communist country, and I have Canadians who have never spent a day under any communist regime, born in Canada, know only the luxuries of Canada, tell that person, immigrant from a communist country, that no, you are wrong, you don't know what you're talking about. I think we have a problem here. We have a problem of arguing from conclusions and not towards them, a problem of motivated reasoning in that the person is looking at the person who actually immigrated from a communist country saying, if you don't agree with me, your assessment of your own experience is inaccurate. You, Mr. Artur Pawlowski, who was born in, raised in, oppressed in, and fled a communist country, don't know what you're talking about when you come here and compare some of the things you see here to what you saw in the country from which you fled. I, being a native Canadian with absolutely no experience of what it is like to live under a communist regime, know better than you, Mr. Pawlowski. Everyone is entitled to their opinion, and at the end of the day, when it comes to law, the only opinion that matters is the opinion of the judge. But when it comes to two opinions, one of which is based on experience, the other one is based on a lack of experience, I know which one I'm going to tend to believe more in. That is not to say they are infallible. That is not to say they are right. They could be wrong. They could be totally traumatized by their experience. But when it comes to someone who has actual experience and someone who doesn't, I'm going to tend to listen a little harder to the person with actual experience. And as a prelude to what you're going to see as one of the sanctions in this court order, let me just read this paragraph to you. Pastor Pawlowski is entitled to express views about the government, the courts, and AHS, but he must do it in a respectful, hate-free way that does not breach AHS health orders. He was not arrested because of his religion or his religious worship or for his outlandish publicity-seeking views. He was arrested for breaching a court order. During his court statement, he pointed out that the premier of the province in the middle of the pandemic was observed dining with a group of other politicians and appearing not to obey the AHS health orders. This gave him an opportunity to suggest that I should jail the premier along with him and they could share the same cell. Again, I view this as part of Pastor Pawlowski's fervent desire that I martyr him by giving him a little more jail time to add a little more gasoline to the anti-mask, anti-vaccination fire. Now, some of this paragraph is in fact legally tenable. It is the law. If you defy a court order, you will be held in contempt of court. But the first sentence in this paragraph, that Artur Pawlowski is free to express his discontent with the government so long as he does it respectfully, what does that even mean? What precedent is the judge trying to set here? That if one expresses their discontent with the government in a manner that a judge deems to be not respectful, that they will somehow be in contempt of court? But the judge just totally bypasses, totally ignores that to say that Artur Pawlowski's stunt, to say that he should be jailed with the premier, Jason Kenney, is just a stunt to further martyr him. Now let's just ignore what Jason Kenney did. After all, Jason Kenney apologized for his hypocrisy and not following the very same rules he was imposing on others, so he should be forgiven. Artur Pawlowski, on the other hand, is protesting these measures to begin with. He protested these measures in full awareness of fact and law. He suffered the consequences, legal, monetary, etc., and he is suffering them still, but he is doing what he thinks he has to do to protest what he feels to be an unjust law. And not only is the judge going to slap down tens of thousands of dollars of fines on the Pawlowski brothers, he is quite literally going to tell Pastor Pawlowski what he must say in public if he is going to express his discontent with these rules. I'm not kidding. The judge literally drafted up verbatim what Artur Pawlowski must say in public if he chooses to speak out against these issues. Pastor Artur Pawlowski's sanction is as follows. 1. He is sentenced to a period of 3 days in prison, which is deemed fully satisfied and served following his initial arrest in May 2021. He is ordered to pay a fine of $23,000, which fine is characterized as $3,000 for breach of the Gates order and $20,000 for breach of the Rook order. And here is the kicker that is, in my humble opinion, rightly making national headlines. The final term of his probation order will be that when he is exercising his right of free speech and speaking against AHS health orders and AHS health recommendations in a public gathering or public forum, platform, including electronic social media, he must indicate in his communications the following.
I am also aware that the views I am expressing to you on this occasion may not be views held by the majority of medical experts in Alberta. While I may disagree with them, I am obliged to inform you that the majority of medical experts favor social distancing, mask wearing, and avoiding large crowds to reduce the spread of COVID-19. Most medical experts also support participation in a vaccination program unless for a valid religious or medical reason you cannot be vaccinated. Vaccinations have been shown statistically to save lives and to reduce the severity of COVID-19 symptoms.
The judge quite literally and unironically said that when Artur Pawlowski is exercising his right of free speech, that he is quite literally compelled to say certain things. So that is the decision, and apparently when Canada is not making international headlines for something Justin Trudeau did, we are making international headlines because apparently free speech in Canada also includes court-compelled speech. Now, I know some of you out there are going to say, what's the big deal? Compelled speech exists. It's not a violation of free speech. We require cigarette packets to contain certain speech on them, certain warnings. The same with alcohol. There's a big difference between that and this. And the brake lights on the car ahead of me flash at an opportune time to end this vlog. If you like my videos and you like my content, please be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and drop a comment in the comment section below because it feeds the algorithm. If you want to support the channel, all of the support links are in the pinned comment. Robert Barnes and I do weekly live streams every Sunday. We do weekly streams with a guest every Wednesday called The Sidebar. If you want to find us and support us on Locals, where supporters get lots of exclusive content, you can find us at
VivaBarnesLaw.locals.com.
All of my content is also on Rumble, so you can find it there. But more important than any of that, take care of yourselves, check in on friends and family, make sure everyone around you is doing well, and now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah!